A typical TIG welding inverter today has two main settings when it comes to TIG welding aluminum: AC frequency and AC balance. Today we're going to deal with AC frequency. AC balance is where you adjust the level of cleaning action. AC frequency settings can be used to focus the arc, especially higher frequency settings. But let's take a look right now at where your low frequency settings work. One application that I have seen where a low frequency setting works is welding on a mismachined part like this. Notice one of these has a chamfer on the inside and one of them's on the outside. So to save the part, you just weld it, put back metal where they can remachine it. Now, a lot of times they'll just make a new part, but if it's a Sunday afternoon, they don't have any more metal and they need to deliver on Monday morning, it comes in handy to be able to weld. So I set the frequency all the way down to 40 here with a rounded tip like this, and that'll let that arc kind of wrap around, and you can lay a nice big fatty bead, and sometimes you might have to put 2 or 3 beads, but you want that first one to be a really good base. You want it to wrap all the way around. You don't need a focused arc on a situation like this. Now you might want to increase the frequency for a second bead, and we'll get to that later in the video. This is working rather well. It's laying down a nice big fat bead, covering up the whole area that was mismachined. But another application for low frequencies is on a thick part that maybe you can't preheat, or maybe you're limited on your amperage, just to get more heat in a part. Okay, we'll move on to another topic here. Higher frequency settings for a more focused arc. We'll run an edge bead here on something a lot thinner. It's kind of rare that you have to do this, but I'm setting it up to 200 Hertz with a nice new sharpened tip, and I'm just going to let the tip round as it rounds. It's only going to round a little bit at 200 Hertz and at this low of amperage, but that lets me focus the arc to run a bead on the edge of something that's 0.63 thickness. But now let's set it back to 40 Hertz and let's run a base foundation bead on a plate, and then we'll gradually increase it by 40 Hertz bead after bead. And if you ever have to do an edge buildup where you're doing multiple beads to build up something like a cooling fin, this is not a bad plan, starting out at low frequencies and then gradually increasing the AC frequency. To start with, I'm not worried about penetrating here at all. I'm just laying a bead. So to start with, I've set it at 40 Hertz. It's got plenty of cleaning action. I'm using a 332 filler metal, 4043 filler metal, and that's that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 40 Hertz to it. I'm going to go up to 80 Hertz and run a bead right on top of that. I'm not going to let it cool for very long, just long enough to get repositioned and get the camera refocused. And we'll run a bead on top of that, and it will be slightly more focused. Not that much, but slightly. And that'll help me kind of stack. What I want to do here, if this was something like a cooling fin or an edge that I needed to build up for refinishing, remachining, or whatever, I'd want that each bead to be slightly skinnier, slightly stacked up higher than the first one. I want the first one to be really fat as a base, but then from there on out, having higher frequencies and a narrower, more focused bead is helpful. Now I'm increasing it to 120 Hertz, which by the way is a really good all-around setting. It's an all-purpose, really useful setting for frequency. You can weld almost anything at 120 Hertz. Outside corner joints, T-joints, and whatnot. But you see how that's kind of really stacking? And kind of the bead, every time I add filler, it's just kind of like really standing at attention. A lot of that would be helped by letting it cool a little bit longer also, but you know, I was kind of pushed for time. But I'm feeding rod in there and it's stacking up high. It's not wrapping way around that previous bead. So now we're gonna increase it again, another 40. That's going to take us to 160 Hertz. And you'll see a difference here too, and you'll see a distinct difference when we get to 200 Hertz. But I think you can see a difference here too. It's getting gradually, it's just sort of getting a more focused arc, and the bead is getting a little skinnier each time. Since I'm getting ready to increase it all the way to 200 Hertz, I went ahead and put a fresh sharpened tapered tip on there. All the way up, max 200 Hertz. That's the max for this machine. And here we go. 200 Hertz, you can see it stack up even a little higher, even though there's several beads under it, even though it doesn't take much amperage now to run a bead. I'm able to stack it up, feed a little wire, and have that bead just stack up good and high instead of things get out of hand on me and wrap all the way around. Now let's go ahead and run another one That one didn't go as well as I thought because I didn't let it cool long enough. This one I let it cool for about a minute before getting back on there. That's a nice, controllable, focused arc that lets me stack beads one on top of another. So that's just one idea, one application for AC frequency, is when you're having to do build-up work on an edge, bead after bead. Hey, if you'd like to learn more about the machine I use in this video or any of the TIG cups or anything like that, go to weldmonger.com. We've got this prime weld TIG welder bundled with some really nice TIG kits. This is just one of several TIG setting videos that I'm doing using this prime weld machine. You should see another video right about now, and eventually I'll have enough videos that covering every single setting, including pulse, so you really have a good idea on what the machine is capable of. Thanks for watching. Visit weldmonger.com.